Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Tell me your story. Today, we got our special guest to tell his story, Mr. Joe. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Oh, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
It's an honor and a privilege, man, to have you on. How are you doing on this day?
I am good. It just the heat just turned on here in Reno, Nevada, and so we're just we got I think 3 days in the upper 90s, and so it's a little bit of like, okay, summer's here, and so we're dealing with the heat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna brag, but we finally got a break over here in Ohio. We had it was like in the humidity over here was pretty good. We were in the 90s. We're starting to get that peak of the summer weather. But now, lately around here, it's been kind of like back and forth. We're currently in the 70s now. We had a little bit of rain that cooled us down. So, yeah, that's pretty nice. But other than that, let's jump into it. Where does your story begin? Where did you grow up at? Where were you born?
Well, I was born not too far from where you were at in Detroit, Michigan. That's where I grew. I spent my first 10 years there, and then my parents did this wild and crazy move, and they moved from Detroit, Michigan to Lake Tahoe, California, because they wanted to ski more. And they that was when I was 10, and they had 3 kids under 10, which still blows me away. But then I grew up in the mountains of California, and then I went to college in Washington, and then spent 20 something years in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I got married, had a kid, got divorced, and then I moved up to Reno to be closer to some of my family.
Like how I always like to ask everybody. So when you were growing up, was this technology or before technology?
Well, it depends on what you mean by technology. I mean, I remember being really jealous when my friends got the Atari and I didn't. We got Pong. That was our technology at the day. So that's probably a little before your time, but that was the technology, and then came the Game Boys and whatnot. So I've been around a few technological changes, but I figure there's technology, every generation has new technology.
So did you play Super Knockout? Did you play Mike Tyson's Knockout?
I did. I didn't have them, so like I'd go over to my friend's house and they would just beat me badly. But I definitely played them. But those were fun times.
Now, what about the first Madden? Did you play that? Or
I
Turbo
didn't.
Bowl with
Yeah,
Bo Jackson?
by that time I never really got into video games the way that some of my friends did, and so I never did Madden. I didn't do Doom, and just all of that. That wasn't me, but I knew of them, of course.
So what were you doing? Were you not like outside of the video games? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was.
You
I
out
was pretty
working?
Yeah, my life was pretty simple. I spent a lot of time skiing, a lot of time in the outdoors. We actually didn't have TV for the 10 years I lived in Tahoe. We didn't have any television, so I read a lot of books, and then it was skiing, biking, hiking, complaining about my parents because we didn't have a TV, that sort of thing, and it was just a lot of being in the outdoors. That was most of what I did for the first 10 years. And by that time, video games were not just part of my life. And so when they really started going off in the 90s and 2000s, that it just wasn't my thing.
You wasn't about it, man. You were like, now I'm out here doing my thing. I'm out here skiing. Were you planning on making it a career? Were you trying to go pro with it?
Yeah, I definitely I raced and had dreams of that. I didn't in the end. It was, you have to be an amazing skier, really dedicated, really, like, you just have to be incredibly good to be good at it. And I was good, but I wasn't that good. And so it taught me a ton. It was very frustrating because I wanted to be good, but I just wasn't. And it a lot of struggles dealing with trying to be good at something, and it took a while, but it was great. Like I wouldn't have traded, but it was very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, just getting that practice in and trying to become the best, you know. But at the end of the day, you just realize like this ain't for me. But
Well,
as much as I love it, it ain't for me.
yeah, even if it is for you, the time tells you that it's not. Like it's, sports and that sort of thing is very, very like matter of fact. You either make the time or you don't, and that's it. That's the at the end of the day, that's what you got.
So, what was your high school experience like this? Were you on the ski team? Did you guys have a ski team? What?
Yeah, we did. Skiing is kind of an odd sport because high school ski racing is not the driving force. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like a travel ball, like the way travel ball is now, where travel baseball and soccer are really the drivers of high end athletics in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even continue today. In ski racing, it's all driven by the mountains. You join a mountain ski team generally, and you train, and then you progress at different race levels. So I actually spent the last 2 years of my high school year. I only did high school half time, so I could ski in the afternoon. And so I would do that. I did summer school classes and whatnot to make up the grades, but it was very much focused. And it was funny. I just went and visited my home mountain where I grew up, and I had to drive 35 miles to high school. I forgot how far that was. Like we did it every day, 35 miles to high school.
Dang, how long? Like how long is that? Like an hour? Two?
Yeah, yeah. Like if when the bus came, like there's actually a bus driver that came and picked us up. That was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like it was a long time on a bus. In a car, it was a little under an hour, but it was driving up and down very severe. Sometimes the roads were closed because of the snow and whatnot. But it was, yeah, I was there this weekend. I was like, man, this is a long drive. I can't remember driving this long.
What is the? What would you say is the most crazy experience you had out there skiing? Like when you first got out there, your first experience ever being on that mountain, coming down. What was going through your head? Can you remember?
I don't remember that. The memory that came to my mind when you said that is um, there on a mountain. There's basically the wind and the snow at the top of the mountain will create these things called cornices, which is basically just a drop off at the top of the mountain. And this one particular day, it must have snowed. It must have been very warm, or let's see how to go. How to there basically it snowed a bunch and there was a separation and it formed a crevasse, like a little at the top, so that there was like snow, then a gap, and then the mountain, and then the drop off. And I was following my ski coach at the time, and he went across this little bridge over the gap. And then when I followed him, it broke underneath me, and I fell. I didn't fall all that far. It was probably about, I don't know, 10 or 12 feet, but I ended up upside down in this crevasse looking up. And I just was like, it was so shocking. So like, and I had no idea what was going to happen. So I was like, whoa. And they had to come down, rappel to get me, kind of pull me up and get me situated. That was when you thought of like that. That was the moment. I've had thousands, many, many, many great ski days, many, many great, just really fun experiences. But when I thought of like the most memorable one, that was the one, because that just like immediate, because it was so different. It only happened once, never happened again, and it was kind of wild.
That sounds nuts, man. You're just cruising behind your coach, and all of a sudden the bridge breaks through, and you're down. You're like you said, you're upside down. You're hanging there.
Yeah, it just was kind of like the bottom of the crevasse, so kind of like a dead cockroach, feet up in the air, skis up in the air, kind of stuck and trying to figure it out. It was, yeah, that was a funny experience.
Were you like after it was all said and done? Were you thinking like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, or you just kind of like dismissed it? What was going on there
No, no, no.
afterwards?
It wasn't that. It was more just like, wow, like it was more like what happened. Like we went and looked at the cross and tried, and then we realized the snow. What we looked at, like what happened and why it happened. But we skied all. It didn't stop skiing.
You're just like, nah, this stuff happens. What was it? Your coach was probably freaked out though, because one
Oh,
minute you're behind him, and all of a sudden you're underneath.
yeah, yeah, he was. Yeah, we laughed about that quite a bit in the years to come.
At the time, he was probably freaked out, and he probably felt bad too. He's like, "Man, it should have been me and not the kid." Like, come on, man.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely an interesting experience.
Did you win any rewards when you were a skier?
I mean, I won a few, but nothing too major. Local races and whatnot. I was one of those guys that was good. Um, ski like any athletics, any sport, you can be very good in your local area and not be anywhere close to the top of a regional or national level. That's the it's just the reality of sports. And it's one of the great joys and great heartbreaks because you can get really, really good and still not be anywhere near the top.
Yeah, that's what you were saying earlier. You're like, well, it's one of those where, like you said, you can be really good at it, but at the same time, you're here and everybody else is up here.
Yeah, and it's not like everybody else. It's just like you take the top handful of skiers from every mountain, and those guys are just better than everybody else. And to be world class at something is difficult. It takes a level of determination that I didn't have at that point. I mean, for the majority of athletes, there's only very, very few of the people that are at the very, very top of the game. And so the majority of people that compete and try and struggle and dedicate time and money and resources and all of that, most of us don't, we never get close to the top. And at that time, I didn't really have a great way of managing that and of understanding that, of celebrating the efforts that I put in and really learning from that. I was kind of bummed. I'm like, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, all of this kind of stuff that definitely impacted me for quite a few years.
So what'd you end up doing? How'd you get over it? It was like, what was happening? What was your next move?
um it was the next movie. I went to college. I just kind of like went through, but it was always in the back of my mind, like, man, I didn't make it, like I'm not good enough. I had that, and that took quite a few years. I'll be honest, like it was there. um you go and you try to date and you try to hope that kind of fills up that hole a little bit, and you realize that doesn't. And then you go and you get married, you have kids and all, and that still has, like, you can still see it. If I'm really honest, like it's still there a little bit. But then I really started saying, okay, like just basically asking the question, who am I and how can I be more of that? So really just acknowledging like who I am, like, like the values and like what I bring, and then how can I be more of that as opposed to what made me a failure, or how could I be better than I was. It just the question shift. And so now it's interesting because I hadn't thought about this in many, many years, but that sense of being a failure and not making it, that occurred after athletics as a young person. I haven't thought about that for quite a few years now.
I think that happens to a lot of us, though. Once you get that first taste of defeat and realize, like, you tried everything you could, and it wasn't for you. And like you said, a lot of us go through a good portion of our life because we're thinking like, okay, I failed at this, and then it kind of becomes like a mindset thing. You don't want to admit that, but sometimes it does. Sometimes you think because you failed here, you're gonna fail over there. You're gonna fail here at everything you do. So how long did it take before you finally snapped out of that and realized, like, it happens. I failed once. I can overcome anything else. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it took me until 20, it was just 4 years ago. So like I burnt out really bad 4 years ago in 2022. And I woke up one day and I'm like, I'm completely done. I can't be anything but myself. And I hadn't thought of it, but that sense of failure all that had been part of such a huge part of my life for many, many years. I in retrospect, looking back now, I could see like, yeah, that was part of it. That was an underlying kind of weight that I was carrying that I didn't know how to let go. But in January of 2022, I said, okay, I basically was like, I can't be anything but myself. It's too exhausting. It's just too frustrating. And so then a couple of days later, I said, okay, well, if I can only be me, then who am I and how can I be more of that? And that question has been driving me for the past 4 years. And that question has given me the foundation to start to look at myself like, okay, I can create something world class. I can move forward. I can, the work that it takes to be world class is now more of a challenge and a little bit of fun, a little frustrating. Like, man, I wish I was there, but it seems manageable and it seems doable as opposed before when I was operating on top of that failures, the idea of being world class just seemed like, yeah, it's a good idea, but ultimately impossible.
So just describe what your day one was like when you first started going at this thing, and you realize like I'm not gonna live like this no more. I'm gonna make something of this life. You know, it's had its hold on me for too long. Describe what your day one was like when you first started
Yeah.
going at it. How could I mean? Because everybody will say like day one, I was ready to throw in the towel then.
Oh, I will not say my day one was not in that January when I woke up. My day one was not inspiring, or it was just it was survival. Because when you're burnt, you have no energy. You literally it was a level of exhaustion that I just didn't know was possible. And I would wake up and well, I'll say this one a couple things that happened. My real day one, if I say there was a day one, a positive day one, was a couple weeks after I burnt out. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he told me about how the Navy SEALs put everything in sets of three, and because apparently, when you're getting shot at, it's easier to remember three things than anything else. And at that time, I had five core values, and I thought those were good. I was like, "Hey, these are five. This is really helps and all this kind of stuff." But then part of my somewhere in my brain said, "Wait a minute. Yeah, you may have five core values, but those values right now have led to you burning out. So something isn't working." That and I looked at it and I said, "Okay, well, let me just try three." Not as an inspired, motivated, like I want to be like a Navy SEAL. I'm gonna have three values. It wasn't like that. It was just like, well, dang, it sounds easier, so I'll give it a try. And from that moment, I reduced my values down to what eventually became connection, curiosity, and fun. And from that moment, I just started. I would wake up every day and ask myself, how can I bring a little connection, a little curiosity or fun to my day? And at first, it was I'd wake up, I'd go to the bathroom, I get a drink of water, and I get back into bed. That was all I could do because when you're burnt, you're burnt. And to think I could do anything more, I just couldn't. But I did that, and then I did it the next day, and those baby steps eventually became bigger steps. And within a couple of months, I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, I'm recovered from burnout. And that was really amazing because I didn't do any yoga, I didn't do any meditation, I didn't do any of the things that you would associate with a burnout recovery plan, or at least I would. And it was really just more about exploring who am I, how can I be more of that, and even if it was just a little bit. And so that experience really taught me two things. One, being anything other than yourself is just exhausting. It just is. And you really need a system for living true to who you are because we all have far more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are. So once we do identify your values, once you do have a sense of who you are, you have to have a system that allows you to replace your doubts and your fears and all your concerns with your values because your doubts and fears are going to come up. They're going to show up in different ways. They're very sneaky little buggers. They show up in all sorts of ways. And so you need a system where every day you're basically asking some version of, hey, how can I bring more of my values to my day? And intentionally doing that because our values, we'd like to think that we live true to them, like, oh yeah, that's how it is. And it's just not because living true to your values is harder. It takes more work. It takes more energy. You're more exposed. It's way more rewarding. It's way more fun. It's all good things, but it takes more work. And our bodies like it to be easy. So our doubts and fears show up
Yeah.
very, very, very quickly. So those are, that's that. So that was my day one when I just said, okay, 3 values. How can I use them? That was really my day one.
So once you started getting into the routine of things, were you writing like? Did you have a calendar? Did you have goals set and everything like written out how you were going to do it?
No, no, because when you're burnt, you're burnt. Like that's the part. That's the crazy part. Like when you're burnt, you're burnt. You don't have the energy to do any of that. You really don't, and that's one of the problems with a lot of burnout recovery plans. It's like it's like a whole other job to recover, and when you don't have the energy, you don't have the energy. So no, it was literally I'd wake up. How can I bring a little courage, connection, or sorry, connection, curiosity, and fun to my day? And like literally at the beginning, it was get up, go to the bathroom, go for a walk. It was minimal stuff. But the thing that I did by doing that was it was always about I would celebrate. I was essentially celebrating myself because another thing you can see is that when you understand your values, you realize that you have value to offer to the world, and
Mm-hmm.
and so I knew that connection, curiosity, and fun. Like, I mean, those aren't everything, but I knew that the world could probably use a little bit more of them, so that kind of kept me going. Um, and in retrospect, could I have put in like bigger plans and more goal setting and all that kind of stuff? Maybe, but at that time, I didn't have a system for dealing with the fears that come up. And this is a huge problem with goal setting. A lot of goal setting is people are like, okay, set a goal. But what happens when you set a goal? I want to lose weight. I want 1 million listeners on my podcast. I want to ask that girl out on a date. Or I want a great marriage. As soon as you set a goal, as soon as like immediately, what's going to show up are some doubts and fears. I'm not good enough. It won't, I don't have enough hair. She'll never ask me out, or she'll never say yes. It will never happen. I'm not good enough. I failed too many times. All of those things will come rushing back because your body's trying to keep you safe. And when you set a goal, it's fundamentally exposing you to danger, disappointment, heartbreak, upset, embarrassment. So we really have to acknowledge those fears. Like when people say like set big goals, go for it. It's like awesome. But are you helping people understand the fears that immediately come up with that
Oh,
goal?
that's yeah. Like you said, it's every day. The moment you wake up, you hear it right away. Doubt creeping in. So I could only imagine your day one compared to everybody else's, where you said you were burned out too. So you're trying to just get into the routine of things, where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do this one today, and kind of just rock and roll with that, and see how that works for me. And yeah, that's how it goes. I mean, day one, and I'll be the first to admit it. I deal with those voices too. You wake up and you have this set in mind, you're ready to go, or the way it starts off, or say something doesn't work out exactly the way you wanted it to on day one. All of a sudden, you're having the doubts and insecurities right away rushing through. You're like, oh, here we go. I'm just trying to do what I can to do to make myself feel better. To get out of this rut. Right? That's what was going on.
Yeah, and it's not even day one. It's day 100. It's day 1,000. It's day however
Yeah,
many you
yeah,
want. Our fears, and
because
this is the part,
you got that continuous repeat.
yeah, and this is the part that I've come to see is that we like to think that if we were a good person, if we had it all together, that we wouldn't have fears, that those fears wouldn't come up, that somehow there's something wrong with us because we have fears, and that's just not true. Our fears are as natural a part of our experience as our joy and our happiness. And instead of trying to say there's something wrong with you for having fears and doubts, what there really is to do is to acknowledge those fears and doubts. Hey, guess what? I feel like I suck. Like I'm really bad right now. Like I'm, whatever it is. Like that's how I feel. And what my values say to do is XYZ, and I'm going to go do one of those. So rather than trying to say there's something wrong with me, that I'm a bad person, that anything like that, because that's how you feel, right? Like so much of the self help world is like, if the experience is if you really worked hard at it, you would get past fears. And that's just not true. It's fundamentally not true. I don't care who it is. If 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 you could be the greatest podcaster in the world, but if all of a sudden your hero walks in and wants to do an interview, you're going to have some doubts and fears. It's going to show up. Taylor Swift talks about fears. Alex Honnold, the guy who climbed El Cap without a rope, talks about fears. Elon Musk talks about fears. The idea that we can actually get past our fears, that somehow we're a better person because we do, is just not true. We have fears, we acknowledge them, and then the trick is to say, hey, what do my values say to do? What do I say to do outside of my fears? And then that will give you ideas.
What would your advice be to the person that, watching, listening right now, that's going through that process right now, but they're feeling like they're not going to be able to do it? They keep having setback after setback. What is your advice to keep them going, to keep pushing them?
Yeah. First off, is you want to get crystal clear on your core values. And if you go to my website, certaingrowth.com, there's a link there's a button there that will take you through 3 questions that will help people identify their values. Because you want to know who you are. If you want to live true to your values, it kind of helps to know what your values are. And so we get them down to 3. We create one word, what I call a spark word, which is something like fun, play, creativity, adventure, something in that realm that will that brings in that side of people that often gets left behind as we become adults. And so we have 3 core values. And then I teach what I call the alignment engine, which are 6 questions that will take you from no matter where you're at. You go through the process, help you identify a goal that you're working on, identify the fears that come up. And then we say, hey, what do your values say to do? And when you choose one of your actions, you'll have more clarity, more confidence, more energy. And then you just make it a habit. We have to get out of this idea, the idea that if, I do a bunch of work, I will eventually get to a point where I don't have this fear is not running my life. That's just not true, because your fears are, as a result of your goals. The only reason you have fears is because you set a goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. That's a goal. And then of course that triggers your fear. If you didn't have the goal of that 20 pounds, you wouldn't have that fear. You see, like it wouldn't. So the idea that we can get past our fears is like saying like I'm going to live a life where I don't have any goals, which is.
How long did it take for you to break the habit, to get into to develop that habit of the burnout, just getting past it?
Yeah, so it took a couple months to be able to really once were able to use my values and then have a sense of energy back. That took a couple months. And then a few months after that, I really started to realize that you needed a system. And then for the past 3 years or so, I've been working on those questions that I told you about. And now I deal with fears every single day. But now what's happening is I've gotten to the point where, and I think this is where a lot of us, it is helpful. You basically get to the idea of fear or values, choose. Like at any given point, you have a choice. Am I going to operate based off of my fears? And sometimes that's a good thing. Like if you're in a toxic environment, you're in a place where you're unsafe, you're in a place, as a lot of women can be in a situation that's in a really awful situation for them. If operating off your fears and keeping yourself safe, that may be the smartest thing to do in that moment, 100%. But you don't want that to be the entire way that at some point, you want to start tapping into your values, building up the confidence and the clarity and the energy to go, to resolve that situation, get out of that situation. But sometimes you got to keep yourself safe. I mean, let's just be honest about that. But for most people, if you're not in a life or death sort of situation, you're dealing with how do I make a sales call? Am I going to put myself out there? Am I going to ask that person on a date? Am I going to try to grow my business? You have a choice in the moment, and it's really interesting when you start to see this. It's like, am I going to operate based off of fear or a value? And our fears show up so fast. Like they just immediately show up. And so I'm starting to just catch myself a little bit faster, so that I operate less off of my fears and more off my values. And I expect I'll be doing that all the time. It will change, but that experience, it really is fear, values, choose.
How long did it take you to develop that habit before, like you said, when you first started, you were on burnout, and then you get into the routine of things. How long was it before the habit started developing and then your inner circle started seeing the change in you?
Well, I'm still wondering if the inner circle sees the change in me. It's getting there. It's getting there. But here's the part that's it's really interesting is what's really helping my inner circle see this is actually they're going through the process because it doesn't make any sense. When if I say fear, values, choose, I'm asserting that you have a choice not to act off of your fears. And for most of us, it's certainly me up until just the past couple of years, we have spent such a lifetime operating based off of our fears, either intentionally or just that's just because that's just the way we do things. We don't know what it's like to live off of our values. We don't have that experience, especially not over time. So when I say values, fear values choose is a little bit like people are saying, well, there is no choice. I don't have that doesn't make any sense because it's not any different. But now what's happening is I'm starting to share this work with people and they're starting to get the sense of like they can choose. Like honestly, I shared this work with my mom and she's used it for a bunch of different ways. And just yesterday, she's like, Joey, that choosing thing is really working. And like, my mom's 80 something years old, and she's done an amazing life and but she has her own doubts and fears and everything. And it was just great. She's like, yeah, I'm just catching myself. Values, fears, choose. Like it's just so simple. That's what she said. It's just so simple. And so I don't know when it became a habit per se. I know that I deepened my understanding. The idea of fear, values, choose is relatively new. I couldn't have if I had told myself that 4 years ago, it would have been like, what are you talking about? I had to go through the work. I had to develop the systems. I had to put in the muscles because like I said, we have way more experience who we think we should be, which is ultimately living off of a fear. I should act this way because my boss wants me to, or my parents want me to, or I want me to. Like I'm afraid to be myself. If I act my certain way, I'll be, nobody will say yes to me on a date. That sort of thing. Those are all fears. And what there's to do is to say, hey, those are all fears. We acknowledge them. That's life. But what do my values say to do in this situation? And that will always give you more clarity, more confidence, and more energy.
So for yourself, did you like make a list? Did you break it down? Your fears, your values, all that stuff?
No, your fears your values are three. For me, it's connection, curiosity, and fun. And you want three so you can remember them easy, so you don't have to think about it. And our fears, I think we have some common fears, like mine are nobody likes me. It doesn't matter what I do. It won't work out. And there's some relation to the values. But what I have found is trying to, your fears are not logical. They're not, you're not thinking about them like, oh, here's this thing. I'm going to choose this fear because it's the right fear. That doesn't happen. What happens is something, you're given an opportunity. Someone says, hey, I want you to, go on a trip around the world with me. And the fear is like, well, I can't do that. Or some, whatever it is, it's just whatever shows up. So rather than trying to think about like the right fear or this sort of fear, I just let those come up. We acknowledge them. And then we say, for me, what does connection, curiosity, and fun say to do in that situation?
So when did you come up with the idea to like make a book for it? When did you say like there's other people like me that are dealing with this that, was it from a friend that referred it to you that said, hey, you should write a book about this, or did you just come up with this on your own?
Let's see, when I first started, well, when I recovered from burnout, I was a little bit surprised. I was like, holy cow, because this was post-COVID. Life had changed a bunch. This was post-COVID, pre-AI, or at least pre-AI publicly. So life was very different. There's a lot of people trying to figure out life at that point. And I had recovered from burnout without any extra support, without any, really just by myself saying, hey, how can I bring my values today? So I knew there was something there. And then over the past few years, I've just been digging into it. And unfortunately, the book writing experience, at least writing this type of book, is that you will write the book. And when you get to the end, you realize something new, something deeper, something that's really amazing that requires you to go back and rewrite the book. And then you rewrite the book And then you get to the end and you're like, oh my gosh, I got this new thing. And so it's been a process of writing and rewriting this book. And honestly, it's really helped me. The idea of fear values go, or fear values choose, is uh, that came out of thinking about the title of the book. I was like, what is going to be this title of this book? Because I kept coming up with ideas that were not, they were okay, but they didn't have that wow factor. And I was honestly, I was working with AI and I was typing ideas and that sort of thing. And then I don't remember where it was, but something got said, and I said, "Oh, fear values choose." And when I got that, lots of things fell into place. So the book writing process has helped me create the process to write the book, which then has helped me create the process. It's been this round and round thing. But one thing that it has taught me is I think everybody has a book, and you just have to get started. You have to start writing. You have to start thinking about what you want to say, dictate out notes, just get it going, because you have something that you want to say. You're just not very good at saying it yet. And the only way to get good at saying it yet is to write and rewrite and explore that over and over again.
All right, now this is going to be completely out of left field because you said you were insecure about the dating world and you felt like because you don't have hair that nobody would ever care about you. Yeah. When did you start exploring those opportunities again? When did you get back into the dating world?
I've done a few. Like, I'll be honest, like I haven't done a lot. I've moved a couple of times for some family stuff. So I've been on the dating apps. I find the dating apps just more interesting than I have. I've dated a few people for a little bit, but one of the things that has really become interesting to me is when you start to get clear on your values, you start to look at dating a little bit differently. Because I know that if someone's not, let's say, into being curious about themselves and the world, we're just not going to get along. Like we're just not. And curiosity inherently creates a sense of instability, because you're always, trying something new, something different. And for a lot of women, they're like, look, I want some stability. I want like really solid stability. So that sort of situation, it's just not a good alignment. And that only came because I realized how much curiosity is important to me.
Yeah.
And so as I become more and more clear about what's important to me and what I am and willing to not tolerate, it's actually refined my dating really. Like, I'm able to say yes or no way faster, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's been a result of me. But I'm not losing confidence. I'm just like, that person's not right for me. I know my person's out there somewhere. I got to find it, or find her. But it's a really interesting thing. You would think that becoming aware would make dating easier, and it does in a certain way. It gives you a lot more freedom, a lot more fun, a lot more different things you can do. But the conversations are way more like to the point. Like, we're talking politics and love and what relationships mean. Like on
Yeah.
day one. We're talking day one. Like, this is just straight up like, like I become very, very clear about who I am, and I hope that she is more clear about who she is. But it's interesting. It's made it fun, and yeah, and I got my love-hate relationship with the apps, and all it's all the same, but it's kind of interesting.
What would you say is your go-to line when you first get on the apps? Because I think I've had this conversation with people before. It's like when you get on the dating apps, it's especially for me when I met my wife, I realized like getting into that world, you gotta come up with a million, like you gotta come up with something that's catchy that's gonna get their attention right away. Because everybody, like, to me, I realized right away that everybody's saying the same lines. Everybody's saying hi. Everybody's saying what's up. You got to come up with something that's gonna catch the eye. What was your line that caught interest right away?
I don't know if it's necessarily a line. I ask most people, like, what do they have to celebrate? What's something they're celebrating recently? What's a win they've had? And I use that at networking events. I use that on LinkedIn. I use that in dating apps. And to me, it's just a question that one doesn't get asked enough. Like, we don't celebrate ourselves and each other enough. And so it's a little bit me on the, soapbox, but it's also, most people never get asked that. So it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? And it leads into generally interesting conversations. And then some people are like, no, I don't celebrate myself, for a variety of reasons, and they're not my person.
Okay. So if I'm playing Cupid right now and this is your dating profile, and your future someone is watching this right now, what would
Okay.
what would you say to that person?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the question, like, am I supposed to say, hey, I'm Joey Chandler, I'm 55 years old? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, well, whoever is watching this, listen right now. It
Yeah,
could be your future love.
be the future
They're
love,
seeing you for
exactly.
the first. They're seeing you for the first time, and they're like, "I like that bald guy. I
I
love
like that.
him. Something about him.
I like that bald
Something
guy.
about him."
Yeah. So it's funny. Well, here's the other question. I'll say this: the person that I'll actually end up being with will know how to argue. Because what I've come to realize, you could have the most passionate, sexy, romantic, loving, amazing relationship, but if you can't resolve disagreements or debates, because those will happen, inevitably they will happen. If you can't resolve those, it doesn't matter. You have essentially you have a short-term relationship. So the person that I want to that I we talk about is like, hey, how do you debate? How do you resolve issues? How do you resolve arguments? So my person would be willing to have those conversations and have fun with it, to actually see. And because I think at the end of the day, you not only have to know how to work together. This is like the value side, what we're creating, but you also have to be able to acknowledge the parts that don't work, the stumbles, and how can you at least acknowledge those, maybe not feed into them, but at least acknowledge them, so that both people feel grounded, loving, and moving forward.
Now, what would be their biggest challenge coming into this relationship today? What should they
Oh,
be aware of just
I think
about you?
dating. Yeah, yeah. I'm insane. Like literally, like I will wake up, and if I have a conversation with someone that teaches me something new about values, I will look at that. I will explore it, and if it is something that will move the ability to help people take advantage of their values and move it forward, if I can find a little of that, I am all in. And like after, and I'm willing to let go a huge part of my life if I find something that's better. Like I'm just willing to let it go. So I've come across as crazy because I'm like, I'm totally into something, and then I'll find something better. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is way better. We got to do it. And the transition to me makes total sense, but to the outside world, it may seem a little bit chaotic.
All right, you heard it there first, folks. Joey will be headed to Love Island this upcoming week.
That's good. I was not expecting that question on the podcast, so that's fun.
Uh, what would your to continue this? What would be your biggest like fear of the relationship? What would you be worried about with anything? What?
Um, Disappointing someone is be the big fear. The I know what it's like to uh, create a really good romance, really strong, and then have it peter off over time. I know that. I don't know what it's like to really, a lot of this awareness came after my divorce. So I don't know what it's really like to wake up every day and say, hey, how can I bring more of my values to the romance and to the sex and to living together and to all the stuff that entails that, that requires a relationship. I, I know it intellectually, but I know there's a difference between intellectually and, really day to day. So we definitely have a fear of disappointing people, and I think that would probably go over some there. That's a great question. Like the idea, yeah. So, do you mind if I go through my questions a little bit just to kind of like work through this, just to see? So
Yeah.
the first question is what can I celebrate about yesterday? And something I can celebrate about yesterday, I worked out for the first time after a couple of weeks of not working out. So I worked out. And what I learned from that, and that's the second question, what did you learn from that? I learned that it feels good to lift weights, especially at my age. It just feels good to move things around.
The energy
So
boost, man, right away.
energy boost, yeah. So the goal here, and this is the third question, what's the goal is how see, so my goal is how do I get over the fear of disappointment, of disappointing someone? We'll just say that that's the goal. And the fear that comes up is like, I don't know what to do. it will sound funny, and I don't know what to do. It will sound funny, and it won't work out. Like those are the fears. So my values are connection, curiosity, and fun. And um, well, the fun one actually says that I could actually write out all the things like well how I think I'm going to disappoint someone. Like just write all those out. Just get them out on paper in there. And that's a little bit of the connection and the curiosity. And I think I think exploring like how I think disappoint like being curious like does that sense of disappointment show up for other people in other places of my life? Does that show up? And that might be interesting. And connecting is um so there's two thoughts. One, I can talk to my ex-wife because I feel like I may have disappointed her. So I just talked to her about that. And then the other part is to stay connected to the parts where I don't think I disappointed people, is to actually, because I'm not 100% of disappointment. I have disappointed people, but there are places where I have lived, I really helped people out. So staying connected to those. So all those ideas of something I can do today, I can write down a bunch of places where I think disappointment shows up and just kind of explore that to see how that shows up in the rest of my life.
Okay. Well,
That's kind of interesting.
Somebody's asking in the background over here. This lady over here in the back is saying, "Do you have a certain type?"
A certain type. I my type of person is. Ask her what she means by type. Does it mean like a certain look or a certain? What does she mean by type?
You really want me to say that? Do you like them thick and juicy, or do you like them, skinny? Do you got like a certain body type?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of an athletic someone. I love going skiing and hiking and biking. So people that can do that, have fun. Oh, the other part, the one is the type is I love a woman can own her greatness. That can like really like she's a badass at something and can really own that without hesitation. And I love to me that's really sexy.
Oh, we got another question over here in the back. Does race does race matter to you? Does race matter to you? Does it?
Like intellectually, I would say no, but I've only ever dated white women, so it must play a role somewhere in that. But things are new and different.
So she's asking, would you be into an African American?
African American. If we could hike and bike and ski and do all, and she was like a total badass, the answer would be yes. I'd have to, it would be there. And I've never dated an African American woman, so I'd have to see.
And she also said, if it really worked out between you and her, would you pack your bags and go overseas, or would you stay put? Would that be like where you draw the line?
Wow. Family is really important to me. My mom and dad are getting a little older, so it would be I'd have to really have to figure out a way to make sure that all of that worked out. Any other questions?
Anybody else? I didn't realize we became a dating show over here.
Didn't know we had an audience.
All right. Well, I guess the next question I would like to throw in here. So if this person is interested in you, wants to get to know you a little bit better, where can they find you at? Where can they connect you at?
Well,
click on your profile.
This is hilarious. So my website is certaingrowth.com. They could find me there. My socials are at Joey Chandler 70. It's the same on TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook. But yeah, that's how they can find me.
Oh, we got one more over here. Oh, you two over there. First date. Where you going on a first date? You gonna go take them to Bob Evans, Olive Garden? Where you going?
First date. Here it depends a little bit on how we met. To me, if you're meeting like on a dating app or something, I think a walk, coffee date, sort of just getting to know a person a little bit is a good idea, because you just don't know that person at all. There's not you don't know, and so something simple, a little bit different is a good idea. I would always ask what they're curious about, like what's kind of interesting to them. So maybe it means going to see a museum or something different like that. The idea of just like going to a dinner is, I don't know. It just, for a first date off of a dating app, it doesn't seem all that interesting to me, and puts too much pressure on the situation. But uh, I have, yeah, because to me, like when you have a first date and there's a good connection, I spent 5 6 hours at a coffee date a little while ago on a great first date. And so I think it's more about the connection, and more than what you're ordering.
Okay. Oh. All right. All right. I'll ask him. What was the worst first date experience you have had so far in your experience?
Words. Um, I haven't had like horrible ones. There's just some where it's just not a connection. You're just like, within the first 5 minutes, you realize that it's, you might be friends. You literally could be friends, because I only go out with people that I find interesting, and some for some reason. So there probably is a friend. I've never had any, like, you know, crazy chaotic stories. I haven't had that. Most of the time, by the time I've asked someone out for a date off of an app, we've had enough conversation where I have a decent idea of what they're about. So I never get anything too crazy. Maybe I should try for that, but I haven't yet.
You want to know? Oh, it's not my story, but I guess I could chime in. So they want to know my first date experiences that were bad. Well, the one that could come to my mind off the top of my head is I had just gotten off work and I was, supposed to meet up with this girl. So we went to go see the movie Black Panther when it first came out. Pretty good movie, I'd say. But I put on a little bit of cologne before I went to go see her, and I tried to refresh myself up because I was just getting off work. And that whole time I was sitting there in the movie with her, watching this with her, getting to know her and everything. I couldn't help but smell something. Something smelled off, and I was thinking to myself the entire time, "Is it me? Is it me?" Because I had just gotten off work, and it just kept bugging me the whole movie. I just kept trying to ignore it, kept trying to ignore it, and then afterwards, we're talking about the movie. I mean, everything was good. It was just what really killed me is it was her the whole time. She had supposedly freshened herself up, but she smelled like a cat box pretty much, and the whole time, and for most people, somebody invites you back to go to their place. That's not my style on the first date. Wasn't then. But it was just one of those the whole time where I couldn't just get over the stench, man. It was like that's all I could smell the entire time, and it took my interest from here to down here, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. I don't. I'm sorry, but
No, it's amazing. It's amazing how many it's amazing what will have you say no to someone. And I mean, there's so many things, women call it the ick, right? As soon as you get the ick, it's done. Whatever it is, it's done. And it happens, that's just life. And the good news, and I'm assuming that you did not end up marrying her.
no, no, no. That was a one and done. That was it.
So you took that experience and brought it into your marriage now. So without her, you may not have been able to marry your wife now. So you learned from that.
Yeah, you live, you learn as you go. But the worst experience from my side, I would say, is when this girl thought I was ghosting her. Same deal. Went to go see a movie. But it was one of those deals where she had kids, and at the time I was afraid because I didn't want to get her kids sick because I had a sore throat, and I didn't want to get her, get my cooties on her and anything like that. So I kept trying to tell her, I was like, hey, can we reschedule for next week? Can we reschedule for next week? Because I would be feeling better, hopefully. But the thing was, she thought I was trying to put her off. She thought I was trying to ghost her. So I was like, all right, I'll take some medicine, try to get myself together to go and talk to her. But the worst part about it, guys, is I shouldn't have gone. I should have stayed. Should have said nope. I'm done. I should have done it because it was probably the most awkward date I've ever been on because I couldn't talk. Because when you have a sore throat, it is impossible to talk. Your voice is all scratchy. You know what I'm saying. So that entire time, it was nothing but silence during that movie. We watched. I couldn't even tell you what movie we watched. I think it was probably 50 Shades of Grey. Great way to start a relationship, right? But
Yeah,
like afterwards, after it was all said and stone, she had already made her decision, and I was trying my best after it was like the movie was over to make something happen. But it's just one of those where it's like, I tried, I tried to tell you, I couldn't do it. I was sick. But
right.
she moved on.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where like I'm going to guess some fears or doubts or worries. You don't want to look bad. Had you say yes to doing this thing that you probably knew in your heart was not a good idea, and I think that happens a lot in dating and in life in general, that we think like, oh, I should do this, or I can't say no, or I can't say yes, and then we do things that we know that we shouldn't do, and then it doesn't work out, and then we're like, oh, of course. And I think this is where just recognizing, am I operating from a fear or a doubt or a worry, or am I operating from my values? And when you do that, like, your values would probably have told you to be like, hey, thank you, I appreciate you, but I can't go today because of this, and for whatever reason. uh, I think when we operate off our fears, we just end up doing more of things that we shouldn't do and saying no to things that we should way too quickly.
And that's what we call a classic case of operating off the fears because it's like you had this connection with this girl, which I did at the time, and I was thinking like, okay, if I don't go today, she's gonna, this conversation, this thing I was building with her, is gonna get blown off, and it did because I operated on the fear of
Yeah.
just that possibility of never getting the chance to meet her. I
Yeah.
acted out of
Oh,
fear, and we got the result.
that's the result. Exactly. Like, how many times, I don't know. I know for me, I would be dating someone, and I'd be like, I don't, this is not right. I want, I want to end it, but I would be afraid to say what I wanted, or I'd be afraid to speak up to say what was there. Even before it got to that point, like in my marriage, there were things that I wanted in our relationship, or I expected in our relationship, that it um they didn't happen, and I didn't have the ability to really express it. Like, I knew something was off, but I didn't have the ability to really say what I want, or the courage to say what I wanted. And it's hard. Like, that's the part. uh, when you read books by Esther Perel, the Dating in Captivity, or Emily Nagoski's Come as You Are, or even No More Mr. Nice Guy, Magnificent Sex, The Ethical Slut, all of those books, they essentially come down to, one, understanding who you are, being clear, like, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and then being able to express that and share that with people, which is, it's scary enough to say, hey, this is what I want. It's even another level of scary to express that to somebody. And then you have to be able to listen and hear their versions of all those things, because they got their own, right? And then the crazy part, the part that is really, I think, is really challenging, but so very important. You have to be curious, because what worked last week probably won't work today, and it certainly won't work next week. And if you're in a marriage, you know this, right? You know that things change, and we have to be continuously curious, not so much like, oh, what worked for you last time, or what worked for you, what feels good for you here. It's more like, no, what's working for you right now? How can I bring more of my values to this situation right now to create a relationship that works for both of us? And that is fundamentally scary. So that's the part that is, I think, is really interesting about dating these days, is that you have to have a sense of curiosity, because again, what worked before, chances are it won't work again. You got to create something new.
Okay. For you in the back, okay. Would you ever consider writing a book about dating?
Yeah, after I'm working on the book right now that is basically the foundation of values or fear choose. That will be the foundation of the book, and then we'll have values or fear choose relationship, values or fear choose business. There'll be a series of books.
Well said. Well said. Other than that, what else? You got anything else that you're working on?
No, the main thing right now, the main thing that I'm just putting out to people is just to start thinking about, are you operating from your fears or your values? Because you know the experience, right? Like for you, like when you're operating off of a fear or doubt, how does that show up in your body? Out of curiosity, like for me, I get tense, I get tunnel vision, I get kind of righteous, that sort of thing. What how do fears show up for you?
When fears come up, I get raised concerns about stuff. For me, my biggest thing is my biggest flaw. I'd say on it is I overthink the situation. I make
Okay.
it bigger than what it actually is,
Yeah.
and then it for
Okay.
me, like you said, I have to sit back and do the whole relax for a minute, allow myself to ease, because then it allows me to think more clearly and understand, like, okay, it's not that big. It's not that big of a deal. Because sometimes we allow our fears and our doubts to get bigger than what they actually are. And if you can sit back for a minute and relax and actually like play it out in your head, this what's going on, why is this bothering you so much, and then kind of think it through, you can actually get through it. I mean, that's what works for me. I don't know about you guys, but that's how I handle it. Like when it comes to fear, doubt, anything, I like to sit back, think about it for a little bit, and see how can I handle this situation.
So yeah, so the main thing is to recognize is, like, when you start overthinking stuff, which totally makes sense, and totally have done that. That's just a trigger warning. It's your body saying, "Hey, we're operating off of some fear or doubt." It's just a mechanical. It's like a what do you call it? A warning light on your dashboard. When you start overthinking, there's a fear there. So then you can say, okay, let me check in here. What's causing that fear? What is the fear? And then what do my values say to do? It just makes everything easier. You don't have to spend a lot of time going through and processing stuff. And so the first thing that I'm just encouraging people to think about, because this answer is overwhelming when you really start to explore how often you're operating off of your fears. Like when you just start to pay attention, like, am I operating from a fear or value? And you start to recognize how quickly those fears will sneak in. It is kind of shocking. Like, I'll be honest, like, it is really shocking. So the first thing I'm just telling people is just be aware. Just start to pay attention how often you're operating on fears, what that feels like in your body. And then from there, we can say, okay, what are my values and what do they say to do? But the first thing is just start paying attention, because we operate on fears way more than we realize. It's just just the way we do things.
And I also like to add on this too is like when it comes to once you meet that someone, you get married, you're gonna have points in your relationship, your marriage where you have disagreements. You guys are gonna fight. You guys are gonna not agree on everything. And when that time comes, I think the best thing to do when you guys are arguing is don't allow your fear and your doubts to get you to the point where you feel like you need to leave. You need to pack your bags. Actually, instead of doing that, what we really need to do, even in relationships, we need to pause, get away from each other for a minute, relax, and kind of, go think about the situation. Because a lot of times what happens in those arguments and disagreements is you you guys are like not on the same page. You're thinking about other stuff, like your fears and doubts are going through your mind. They're going through her head or his head, and at that time you just need to step away from each other, get a second away, go breathe, take a walk, do what you have to do, and get yourself together. That way, when you guys come back, you guys can talk about it. Sit down, one on one, and explain to you like what's really going on. Talk it out. Don't don't pack your bags.
Yeah, the really interesting part is that to make that possible, you want to practice asking fears or values and operate in everyday life when things are going well, when in the easy parts of your life. Practice, because your fears will show up in the easy parts of your life. If you practice that in the easy parts where it's not as complicated, there's not so much stress and there's not so much on the line. If you practice it there, in the times when you then are now having an argument with your spouse, things do start to get like a little more serious, let's say, you have the muscle memory, the practice. If the first time you start talking about values is when you're arguing with your wife, it won't work. Like I can guarantee you 100% it won't work because it takes practice. It takes a muscle. And that'd be the other part is if you just build up the muscle of saying, hey, I'm operating on my fears. What do my values say to do? And you practice making that switch. The more you do that in the easy parts of life, the easier it's going to be in the bigger, when you're looking for a job or you're working through a challenge with your spouse or one of your kids. You got to do it in the easy parts because it takes practice. It's not, again, you're not a good person because you know how to use values. You're not a good person or a bad person because you don't. It's just simply a muscle that you have.
Also, another big thing, and I know a lot of people are not going to want to hear this, is you're going to have to forgive. You're going to have to say, I'm sorry. You're going to have to let your pride, your ego drop and realize, like, yeah, you did make the mistake. Or sometimes you're going to have to step out and say, in order to keep your relationship, your marriage together, you're going to have to say, I'm sorry. I made the mistake. Take the blame for it and keep going forward with it, because sometimes, you got to be the bigger person. Otherwise, it's just going to be more tension, more fuel being added to the fire. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. You're going to have to forgive. You're going to have to say sorry, because in the heat of the moment, some things are said that are not meant to be said.
Yeah. And it's not that you're the bigger person. I 100% agree. It's not that you're the bigger person. It's that you're living true to your values. If you look at your values, like mine are connection, me being angry at someone, holding that resentment, whatever that kind of thing is fundamentally getting in the way of that connection. It's not allowing me to be curious. It's not allowing me to be fun. So when you start to see apologizing, taking responsibility, owning the situation, even though when it feels really uncomfortable and you really want to blame, like, motherfucker, when you're in that situation, when you can start to see that as something that's actually a benefit to you and as a reflection of who you are, then that becomes easier.
All right, this is going to get kind of personal, and you don't have to answer. You can actually say I passed. But
I have to just quick. I have to leave in 4 minutes. I have a 10 o'clock call.
Okay.
Sorry.
As we'll begin, well, then we'll just wrap it up then. That'll be for some other time. Other than that, as we begin to wrap this thing up, I just simply want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you, man. This was a lot of my podcasts. I have kind of a set. There's a set series of questions that I know that I've had, and this is not one of them. So this has been fun.
And I'm honored that I was able to build your dating profile for you. So hopefully, somebody comes across this and you get that'd be amazing. I mean, if you message me later in the future and say that it actually worked, it actually happened, I'm like, woo, glad I was able to help you out. Other than that, I like to wrap it up with. I pass the microphone over to you because you have experience with being on podcasts and stuff. So I'll allow you to ask me the last 3 questions. It could be any random questions.
Last 3 questions. What's something you're celebrating about yesterday?
Another day, another blessing. I'm alive, I'm healthy, I'm living well, and I'm ready for whatever today brings.
Okay. And what did you learn from that?
Life is precious, man. You only get one of these things. You got to make the most of it.
Okay. And then, so what's your big goal now?
To keep living for the day. It's like, that's a key bullet for today.
Is there something else like you're trying to accomplish? Something that's like important to you right now?
Right now, the biggest thing that I want to do is, like most people, is I got married and I allowed myself to slack. I started happily eating, and I need to lose some weight.
Okay.
Caught up to
me. There we go. There we
so
go.
my challenge to myself is to lose, like you said, lose at least 20 pounds, get myself slimmed down again. Because looking down, I'm just like, I think it's time.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I wish you the very best of luck. And if anything I can do to help you on that, let me know.
All right. Other than that, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is your podcast host, Chris. You just heard the story of Joey and the dating profile of Joey. Until next time, peace out.